And just like that, gentlemen, we are live with another interview here on the Long Box Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I'm the Long Box Punk. And today with me, I have two gentlemen doing another panel style interview to talk all about The World Ends in Fire with both DC Horn and we got Brendan Albetski. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yep, right in one.
Awesome. I love it, man. Just dingers for days. That's a really old YouTube reference that no one understands but my wife. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. I am excited to talk to you. I'm properly caffeinated, so I'm going to be talking 77 miles a minute. I hope you can keep up, which I think you're going to be able to. Having read the first two issues of this story, it is full of energy, it's full of life, and it just jumps off of the page. Before we get into anything, because I'm already going way ahead of where I wanted to go first, I just want to ask about what your origin story is. How did you end up in comics, both writing and arting comics? How did you end up here? Why comics? Why now?
You first.
Yeah, I think we agreed I had to go first, right?
That's right. No, I'm just nailing it down now, you know.
I think like probably most people in the indie space, I grew up on comics. I learned to read basically on comic books. My first comic was this is the first appearance of the War Machine armor.
Okay.
Like, way back in the day. But ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to do something in comic books. Then you grow up and the fantasy just dies and you become an adult for a little while. But now that I'm in my midlife crisis, it's, this moment of you got to try something. Mm-hmm. But truthfully, man, I have two daughters. And when they were really little, I caught them one time playing, they pretended to be YouTubers. And they were just sitting in the living room and they're like, hey guys, and all that stuff. I was like, dude, that's so cool. But it's like, the technology's here. Like I can make a YouTube channel. So we did for a little while. We had a little YouTube channel, just the girls, and they were doing like Let's Play games. And that was just really inspiring for me. It's like, well, if I can help them achieve something, like a dream, then why don't I just try myself? So from there, it just started reaching out to artists and just playing around. But that's what got me started in particular.
That's cool. I also did the YouTube channel with my daughter. Yeah. And it was just selfishly like, I just want to have a reason to do random things with her. So it's cool that as to hear another dad that's like, I just did the thing because they wanted to, and then the fact that they inspired you to just take the chance and go for it. I think that's awesome. Brendan, what about you?
Yeah. I also have a YouTube channel that's active now. I just started
Perfect.
It's been drawing stuff, but it's just my name. It's on YouTube. You should check it out sometime if you like to watch a guy struggle to draw pictures. But yeah, I started I also have a long history of reading comics. Mostly I used to read like comics in the newspaper, syndicated comic strips, that kind of stuff, when I was really young. And the dream died a lot earlier for me than it did for most people. I think I was right around like middle school, elementary school when I started to like draw things, and really just didn't take to it very naturally, and was not really encouraged by anyone to keep going with it. So I just let it go as something that like, I can't do this. And this was, I was in school in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And I don't know how school is now, but back then there was like this kind of big focus on what you're like talented to do, what you're naturally acclimated to do. So you were pushed oftentimes in the direction of things that you really had like a natural affinity for. And if you didn't, it was like, that's not for you, go do something else. And for me, they wanted me to like play music and instruments, and I did that kind of thing. And I was supposed to be good at math. That was just, they were dead wrong about that. I don't know who got that idea. But so I followed after those things, and none of them really satisfied me in the way that I thought they were supposed to. When I was in my 20s, I got a job. I was trying to be a writer, and I did still like comics, and a lot of my friends were into comics. I was like really inspired by a lot of comics and a lot of like really serious comics writers. And I'm like, I can do this from like a literary standpoint, because I was in my early 20s and I was a college student and I was really full of myself. And I don't know if I can swear on this show, but I was way up my own ass on all that kind of stuff. So I got a job at my college newspaper. I went to UConn. The Connecticut Daily Campus is the college newspaper for University of Connecticut, and they had a job opening for an editor for the comics page. And if you got a comic strip printed in the Daily Campus, you got $5. So I figured that if I was the editor of the page, I could print as many comic strips as I wanted, and I could get $5 every time that I did that. So nobody else applied for the job. I was the only one, so I got it. And that's why I started drawing. Is I was writing a strip for another artist friend of mine, and we were splitting the $5. But I'm like, I'm going to double dip, and I'm going to draw one myself, and I'm going to take the full $5 on that one. And after that, it was like, I graduated, and my big plan was like, I am going to write these comic books. I've got all of these artist friends. They're going to draw them for me. ... Step-free profits. I was not fun to work with. I was a real dick. It's a miracle that all these people are still friends with me, because all of them told me they didn't want to work with me after trying like one or two. Like I had a couple of drafts of the script, and I had no idea what I was doing. I said to myself, well, okay, none of these jerks want to draw my brilliant scripts. I'll just do it myself. How hard could it be? It's really hard, actually. It turns out. So I think my plan was like, it was going to take like a year to teach myself how to draw well enough to like make these big space operas and stuff. And it just kind of kicked off a lifelong passion that I didn't realize that I had, and I felt like I was kind of like 10 years late to, So I've just been making up for lost time ever since, and going as hard as I can, and doing as much as I can, and trying to become a better and more collaborative person when I do work with people. Yeah. And I think that DC hopefully has nice things to say about me. I've got a lot of writing partners now that it's like I feel like I've really improved that aspect of myself. So yeah, it's just the best way to tell a story. And it's the best way to experience a story. And I've tried lots of different ways, and this is the one that feels correct. So I really believe really strongly and passionately in it. It's my whole life now. So I'm a big proponent of comics, and of anybody who wants to try their hand at making them, because really I was a big dumb idiot who couldn't draw stick figures, and all I did was work and practice at it every day for a long time, and now I'm pretty good at it. And it's like, you can do it too. Everybody can do it. That's a big point of my YouTube channel, is like, you can sit here and watch me struggle to do this, so that you know that it's not magic, and that you can just sit here and do it for hours on end and come up with something that you like. So that's
awesome. That's great. I like the not letting other people tell you what you can't do part of that story. Like, you were told you can't do it, and then you got to the point where like, no, but I want to do it. So you just like, how very DIY punk rock of you. You mentioned,
yeah, you're right. I guess, yeah, no, I'll take that. Yeah.
I'm gonna just like subtly drop that in to make sure that people know what they're watching and listening to as they go through this. You mentioned that you did music stuff in DC. I know we talked before I hit the button, that you also did music. Like, what for you what similarities in the Venn diagrams of music and comics do you see play true in both?
Wow, that's a great question. Wow, I wasn't expecting anything that deep, man.
Hey,
dude, for however the magic works, I can't maybe put it the proper words, but like music and storytelling for me is such a deep connection. Like the Once Upon a Time in Xenotopia series that I do, every issue is, oh yeah, there we go, plug.
You mean this one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Every issue is named after like lyrics of a song. But like, I love storytelling in songs. I love music videos. Like, so many of my ideas really come from like music videos or a song that will put me in a certain mind space, and then I just start creating my own weird fan fiction. And like, music has such a deep core part of my creative process that how I truly put that into the story and everything, I don't really know, but it is tight into the process without a doubt.
Yeah. Brendan, do you see overlaps as well from when you were like learning instruments and then learning how to do artwork better?
Art's easier on the hands, I'll tell you that. I played guitar in a band called Kingfisher when I was in college. Okay. I played bass in a band called Roadside Manor a little bit after college, and I had several years where my weekend job was as an organist at a church. Okay, and all of those were very like I approached it almost of a workman-like style, which is really similar to how I do comics, where it's like you gotta learn the material and make it rote. and then you take it to the performance, and you do it as you practiced it, and hopefully it comes out well. That's where it's a little bit different than comics. With comics, you kind of you get to sit in the office, and if something sucks, you can email DC and say, hey, it's going to be 2 more days. Do it again. There's a little bit less of that kind of like we're doing it live aspect to it.
Yeah.
Which I definitely appreciate, kind of the time to sit and think. But any kind of creative endeavor is, you kind of strip the mystique away from it. And you strip the idea of like the rock star fantasy, which so few people get to actually experience, right? And you just kind of, if you can attach yourself to the work and still love what you're doing, even though you're doing work, that's like a really important thing that keeps you going. So I think that's kind of similar for both things. And for art, I've been able to keep that going for years. For music, the fire kind of died out. So, you can kind of see which one was better for me. But I still think that that's kind of a really important aspect of like deciding what creative pursuits you want to follow. Is like, if you can look at it like, here's a shit ton of work that you have to do.
Yeah.
Do you still want to do it? That's kind of determining.
There is something to be said of like, when or you're fully bought in on something. Like for me, I would much rather spend 4 solid hours, which is very rare because my ADHD doesn't let me do that. But if I would rather spend 4 solid hours doing emails, admin stuff, updating calendars, scheduling interviews, like building graphics, taking notes, doing research, I would much rather do that for this show than I would spend 2 hours putting in the same amount of effort at my regular job. Because I know that this is a thing that I'm getting back from, whereas work is like, I get paid, like I get a paycheck, but that's the point of that job. This is like, I enjoy doing this. And so it's easier for me to expend all of that energy to do it, because there are Saturday mornings at the coffee shop that I just have to put down a double espresso and hammer out emails and update my calendar. And I just did that Saturday. So speaking of like there's not a word there. I forget what I was going to say because the words escape me now because my brain wanted to go back to coffee. So instead, because I have a writer here and an artist here, I only ever get to ask this question to one person and get a one-sided thing. And I would love to just kind of talk through what creating the comic is like for the two of you. Like how does that process work? Because I know writers like, oh, I do a script and then I give it to the artist and then they make it come to life and make it better. And then they send it back and then I approve or disapprove or whatever. Like, how does that work for the two of you? Because this isn't the first time that you've worked together, right?
It's just the first series we've worked on together, but we've done 5 issues of it now.
Okay.
And we've done some cover work and some stuff. Yeah. We've done some work together, but this was our first series.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. It's a very conversational process. We do like scripts and then proofs of the interiors that we do send back and forth to each other. But I think the bulk of the work that we do together is done in our DMs. We're in pretty constant communication with each other, and we really just talk about this stuff all the time. And that's really helpful into kind of breathing life into it for me, at least, because we can ask questions and get answers in real time. It's very informal. We've kind of developed a rapport and a style that I sometimes, when I'm working with other people, I kind of forget that I'm working with somebody else, and it's like, all right, no, maybe be a little more professional here than usual. But DC talked, like, one of the things that DC was talking about earlier was how much he gets out of music videos, and the amount of times that I'll just wake up to like 3 or 4 music videos in my inbox of just like, hey, check this out, and it's not even really related to anything that we're working on. It's just like, this is cool. Keep this kind of energy in mind. It's a vibes-based economy. I say it all the time because I think it's silly, but it kind of is. I don't know.
No, I like that a lot. It's a vibes-based economy.
Yeah, and I was talking earlier, I think before you started recording, but this is probably the second, maybe third time we've ever spoken to each other.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's third.
So that then we've finished 5 comics. We've started a second series that we're 2 issues in, and then all the cover work. Yeah, this is maybe the 3rd time we've ever spoken. So
I'm trying to think of. It's pretty common for me to work that way. Honestly, I work on a lot of different series, and so like Circuit Champ was a comic we talked about earlier. I work on that with John Solito. And I feel like similarly, I've talked to John maybe 2 or 3 times. I'm working on a comic right now with Alice Quinn Rose, and I've done some stuff with her before. And we're working on a new thing together. I think I probably talked to her more than any of the other writers I work with, just because she really likes to like, okay, let's have a call and talk about this. But for the most part, it's like it's really text based in a lot of ways. A lot of the way that people are working now, at least in my experience.
Yeah, we're really the same. I mean, like David Swanson, who I do a lot of work with. Yeah, I've met him once, spoke to him once. The only time I've ever, now his wife is the editor for Xenotopia, and we call a lot because she just prefers, that type of dialogue and note taking and all that. But like Matthias, I work with, never spoke to him. Which I work with people around the world too, because like he's in Uruguay, work with people in Italy, and so. Like you can really just go hang out and talk to them. So
I like to have things in writing too, because I have a goldfish memory. I can't. I got nothing sticks. So it's like if we don't have it written down, it's not going in the book.
With this series in particular, I mean, with working with Brendan on this is it's very collaborative. Absolutely. Usually it's like I come up with the idea. I have sort of like a the concept. Hey, I want to do this, this, and this, and he's like either that's fire or no, it sucks or whatever. We kind of get the loose idea put together, and then it falls to me to come up with an outline and a script. And I said to him, and then he jokes about he has the final say and everything. So then he gets to do whatever he wants at the end. But,
yeah, I do like saying that. I have the final files. I'm the last person to touch them. Technically, I can do whatever I want.
And that's what I love working with Brendan. With everyone I work with, honestly, is they're all creators on their own right. So working with Brendan, with Mauro Kiru and everything else that you do, like I know it's in good hands. Like from a storytelling perspective, like I'm just putting words down. I'm just giving you an idea. But quite often, he says, "Hey, I don't like that." We won't really have the conversation. He'll just go ahead and do it in all seriousness. But he's always right. It's like the flow works a little bit better. So there's a trust.
I used to ask permission, but 5 issues deep, I just kind of go for it to save time. and I would redo it if you really didn't like it. I would. But yeah, no, we do kind of trust. We really trust each other at this point. And there are, there are definitely like overarching things for the whole comic that because. I think there's only been one time, and I can't remember the exact occurrence, but there's only been one time where DC sent me something, and I'm just like, no, we're not doing that. Like, but there's definitely like I know there's like an overarching plot and a theme for the whole series. That the first time he pitched it to me, I was like, oh, I don't like that at all. And he's like, well, that's kind of the whole book. and I was like, and it's taken me a long time to come around to it, but I'm on board now. It's like, it's just that it's something that for me, I have to get used to the ideas sometimes. I can't say it because it's a spoiler, but you're really going to enjoy it when you get to it. But yeah, it's because I do, I'm also the writer and the artist for my Mauro Kiru books. That's 100% me. So it's like I do, and I started this whole thing as a writer. So like I understand the writer mindset, and I understand like how to work with a script and how to make edits to a script. And a lot of times I don't do those in writing; I do them in pictures. But the writing I read his and I do the edits up here, and then they come down and they come out on the page. And it's a time saver. Instead of firing back 3 or 4 drafts of the script, I just sketch the page out and I say, what do you think of this? And if the answer is yes, then we do the page, and if it's no, then we fix it. You gotta work fast on these things. Even though you have it's self-paced and you have all the time in the world, we'd like to finish the story sometime in this millennium. So. We've done 5 issues in like a year and a half, something like that.
If even that, honestly.
Yeah. It's been quick. It's been quick. And I don't know what the final issue count on the whole series is going to be, but it's it's something that I think could probably be done within the next 2-3 years, depending on how fast we want to take it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of the speed that you need to move at if you want to keep people interested in your story. With indie folks, everybody's kind of got their own stuff going on. Yeah. And it's difficult to get an issue out a month. I mean, it's difficult to get an issue out a month for the pros. But it's like you have to kind of at least keep top of mind with folks so that they don't forget who you are and what you're doing. Because there's a lot of us out there.
I think that's probably my biggest complaint in the indie scene as a fan, going to different conventions and different stuff, is like, you see this comic, it's like, really cool, I like it. But then where's number 2?
Yeah.
And like I've picked up several awesome books on Kickstarter. Like it's amazing and I love it, but like there's no issue 2 or no issue 3, or you hear about a year later, and it's a hard pill to swallow. And you see, and I understand why. Like it's not to pick on other creators, because it's a difficult process, but like that's a huge flaw generally in the indie scene, I do think. Yeah,
and there's nothing they can do about it in a lot of cases, because most folks are working day jobs, and this is what they got the time for.
Absolutely,
yeah. Dang it, related to the process and like how you guys work together. I love the characters in the books asking the 2 of you questions at the end of the issues. So I think that's so clever.
Neither one of us can take credit for that.
It's not us, yeah.
So we're both really good friends with Cody with Keeping It Geekly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'd reach out to him about like, hey, would you do like a written interview that we put it into the comics? So after a week or 2, I guess he thought about it, was working on it, and then he has like, hey, what if? I think the first one was 84, the character. Yeah. It's like, what if 84 is asking the questions? And I'm like, that's insane, but let's try it. It was really, really cool. Like, but it's a nuts idea, but I can't take any credit. It's all Cody on that one.
Yeah, Cody had a great idea with that one. The answers obviously were written by us. But we ran with it too, because we got the chance to do like some of the alt costume art for a lot of the characters. See, you've read the first 2 issues, so you've seen the 84 and the Asterisk. We did one for Warcut. We did there's a Phil one as well, which is a little bit sillier. But
honestly, that's the one that I'm looking forward to.
I really like the Warcut because all of the questions are just him saying.
Yeah.
So we have to answer the questions in a way that sort of like reveals the question at the same time. That one is fun.
That's cool. Yeah, because in one of I think it was the first issue's Q&A at the back, the question was asked about like where the characters came from. And reading it, I thought it was really interesting that like some of them were carryover characters for UDC. Some of them, like you had an idea, but then Brendan got a hold of it and like injected all of his energy into it. And then it completely came out into something different. And I just thought, like, even reading that, I was like, oh, this is going to be it has to be a very cool back and forth dialogue that you guys have developing that stuff. Like how DC is the writer, do you like, is there a lot of like hold tight to these things because these are your characters and then you're learning to let go? Or is it easy for you to be like, hey, I have this idea. Oh, you want to totally change it? But yeah, go lead. No, let's do that. Like
Absolutely the latter on that one. I mean, I'm very, very free and open with ideas. Nothing is like cemented down. But I think the best example of this is the character in issue 3, El Gallo. It's one of my favorite characters in the thing. But like I'd wrote the character in the script, and I had a very clear idea of what the character was like, their tone. Like I had a voice in my head. I had everything figured out.
Yeah.
And then I saw the picture, because Brendan designed that character entirely on his own. And when I saw the picture, I was like, no. I had to go back and rewrite all of his dialogue. His entire scenes, everything he's been in, it was just rewritten because I saw his character. And it was like, it's perfect. It's a whole other character, like just to scratch everything I had. And let's go straight to this new idea. So
the whole source, I mean, that character is in issue 3. And I'm also one of my favorite characters. And the whole source of that is that DC said he wanted me to do a character that was based on Zorro, and I immediately misunderstood and thought he meant Roronoa Zorro from One Piece.
I was going very stoic, like, I was just like very like dark, and
So he's thinking like he makes the sign of the Z, and I'm thinking 3-sword style, 38 caliber. And then I went in an entirely third direction. It was like, okay, we want vigilante, we want kind of old timey vigilante, and I was like, Lobster Johnson from Hellboy is like one of my favorite old timey vigilantes, so I'm gonna tape that in there as well. And then a whole bunch of other stuff happened. The one that sticks out the most to me. Yeah, there he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love him so much.
He's probably the most bombastic character in the comic. But the one that sticks out the most to me is when we were doing the initial designs, because it was DC sent me like a stack of orphan ideas. And it was like, do you like any of these? Here's kind of what I'm thinking for some of the characters. And the one he sent me for Warcott, the original pitch for Warcott was like, okay, so he has like stone magic, and he's wearing heavy armor and he's very tanky. And the design that he sent me was like a tall, thin guy in full plate armor with a big sword.
Yeah, it was a character from Dark Souls 1.
Was it? Oh, okay.
It's a villain for the Dark Souls 1. These like stone armor, grassy, mold looking dudes.
And I looked at it and I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And so there is in volume 1 in the kind of the supplemental material in the back, we show some of the early character designs. And there were a couple of different ways that I tried to design Warcott as somebody who had like a sword and shield. And I wanted to make him huge, and I just couldn't find my way around doing it because the first issue is so much of them in the car. Yeah. And I was like, I can't get this giant guy in the car with his big ass weapons. So that's when he became a fisticuffs guy. And I just, again, I take a bunch of character designs and I stick them in a blender and then something else comes out. And so I was really enamored with like the tin pot helmet style thing of like Steiner from Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
And then I'm obsessed with, when we were doing the original designs, I think Guilty Gear Strive had either just come out or maybe I was just playing it again. I don't remember. But anyways, there's a character in Guilty Gear named Potemkin, who's this giant Russian dude with huge gauntlets. And he's like 9 feet tall and he towers over all the other characters. And I was like, I'm gonna steal some of that too. So I kind of put those two things together, and that's really Warcott. And I like, he's got the helmet that he can crouch down, and it kind of closes like an actual pot. And we wanted to make him lovable too, right? He's kind of got a big teddy bear quality to him in a certain way.
Right, right. Well, there's a scene in the second issue where they're at their diner, and they have all slid up to the bar to like order their water. And you see the background silhouettes of them, and Warcott's is this huge thing, and then just 2 little sticks for legs.
Do not get Brendan started on silhouettes.
No, we'll be here all night. We will.
Got it. All right. Yeah. Okay.
I was recently doing designs for another. I was talking about working with Alice Quinn Rose, and I'm working on a comic with her right now, and I recently turned in character designs for that. And she was like, I love how different all the silhouettes are. And I was like, oh, the silhouettes. Yeah, no. It's important to me that everybody has a unique silhouette. Yeah.
I would agree with you, even from a reader standpoint, because then like I'm terrible with names. I forget them all. That's like I wrote them down so that I wouldn't forget the names of the main characters. But from like a visually, if you have a bunch of characters that look similarly, even if their names and personalities and histories and all that stuff are drastically different, like if you strip everything down to just what's on the page, it can be very confusing. And so the different sized and shaped and silhouettes of the characters like really helps. And if I'm being honest, like part of why I initially like backed this, I think it was the second issue on Kickstarter, was the poster that had the 4 character designs on the poster where they're all like, it's all their silhouettes. And I was like, those characters are, yes, that's the one. I couldn't find mine. I'm redoing my basement and it's somewhere in a box with all my other Kickstarter swag. Cause I was going to try and put it, I got the books there. They're there.
I see them.
They're small, but they're there.
Variant covers, man.
That's right. It was the design of the characters that I was like, that's too fat. Like they're too wildly different not to wonder what is going on. Like, how did those four end up as the traveling troubadour group of just wild characters? And then I read it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go like take Advil because I just moved way too quickly and I just like cranked through it. And so I actually slowed myself down, waited a week, and then read them again, because the first time the action is so fast paced, which I love. But it's so quick that I was like, did I miss something? Because I was so like, what is happening? Where are they going? Who are they fighting? What is that person doing? Like, there was so much of that as I was reading it that I got done and I was just like, oh, I have to breathe again. Like, what is happening? So I love, like, for the way that your art portrays all of like the chase scenes with the car and the dragon and the diner fight scenes and all of this stuff, it feels very much like you liked anime as a kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What the hell are you talking about?
No.
I'm turning on Jujutsu Kaisen as soon as we're done here, you know?
Perfect. But yeah, I just like the energy that you somehow infused, and then to find out that like you only just started bootstrapping your artwork yourself. I was just like, I'm just impressed, because I don't understand how you go from barely drawing stick figures, your own words, not mine.
Yeah, you know,
so like what you're doing now, I don't understand how you
slowly and carefully. Yeah, it's a lot of monkey see, monkey do, right? You copy kind of what other people have done, and you take the next step, or you skew it in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, I definitely get inspired a lot by Red Line. I don't know if you've seen Red Line, but if you haven't, you should.
Okay.
Red Line is an excellent animated feature about car racing in the science fiction future. And a character named Sweet JP drives a Trans Am and races all of these ridiculous sci-fi vehicles in a Trans Am. And a lot of my inspiration for the first issue came from Red Line. I think there are some panels that are direct references to Red Line, specifically with the car. Specific frames in Red Line with the Trans Am, and the car in World Ends in Fire obviously is not a Trans Am. It's a weirdo fantasy wizard car that I made up, but it has similar lines and shape to Sweet JP's Trans Am. And you know, we designed the characters before I read the script for the first issue, but it ended up being, you know, a good thing to make them so drastically different, because they spend 75% of that first issue in a car. Yeah. And you still got to be able to tell who's who and what's going on. And two of the characters don't talk. You know, so but yeah, high octane action and just being able to capture a ton of energy in a static image. Which also comes from like an anime upbringing, because, you know, while there's like lots of stylish action and stuff that happens in anime, and anime is getting better on the whole of like having things actually be animated and happen. But when I was a kid, it was two muscle dudes standing in a field screaming at each other for 20 minutes.
And it was great.
And it was great. That's right. Bring that energy to the comic. So yeah, that's definitely good clock, because there's a lot of that kind of energy going on here, and yeah, as far as like learning how to draw, you know, this is there was barely stick figures, and then there was, you know, a decade of me trying my hardest to become an artist, and then World Ends in Fire is kind of right at the end of that. So you know, I don't want people to think that they're going to be able to turn it around in a week, but you know, it really, again, I'll say it endlessly, is that if you do practice it every day and you are really passionate about it, you'll get there eventually. I mean, who knows how long it'll take, but you'll get there.
Right.
Well, I've always wondered, you know, actually from what you're talking about, is your lack of like formal education to it helped you to define this new style, like in a way you became your own thing by having to figure it out on your own.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely my thing. I can say that for sure, is that it is exclusively mine, and no one else can have it. Yeah, no, there are definitely points, especially when I talk to other people who have gone to art school and are very formally trained, where I feel like, hey, you know, I'm kind of kind of the clown in this room, but for the most part, that doesn't really bother me. I do what I do, and I feel like I'm at least getting something out of it. And you got to be your own biggest fan first. So as long as I'm happy with it, as long as DC's happy with it, I'm mirrored here. As long as DC's happy with it, I'm good with that. Now, if the readers like it, that's also a bonus. I would appreciate that as well. So
yeah. Now speaking of formal training, DC, how for your writing, have you always been writing stuff too?
No. Absolutely. When I started this venture here, like I went to a local design company, the next town over, and I was just like, dude, I have all these ideas. I just want to do something, and I had this list, and we started out, we just want to make a card game. That's actually all this actually started. It was called actually I think I have a version up here, the Xanatopian Conflict. And it was just like fighting trade game. We did all this stuff, and so it never really was meant to be a comic. I think, we started working at some point on some concept art, and I got it, and I was like, this looks like a comic. Let's just give it a go. Let's give it a try. And, you had the first volume of Xanatopia, and, and I'm really proud of the first volume, but there's at least 4 issues of trashed material that we did that, artwork was finished, lettering was finished, everything, and threw it away because, that volume was me learning how to make comic books.
Got it.
And that's one of the things that really started with The World Ends in Fire was I wasn't really happy with the first issue of Xanatopia. So before we really had The World Ends in Fire kind of outlined as far as the whole series, I just wanted to redeem myself in a way of a first issue. I wanted to have a nice pilot, something that was action. And I mean, you talk about being fast paced and action. That's why I wanted to throw some stuff out there, a first issue.
Yeah.
But truthfully, the Xanatopia was my education. It was me learning how to do everything. Now, since then, I've taken several classes from the Kubert School of Art.
Okay.
They have some online classes, really cool online writing classes. And I've learned a lot from there. And I recommend those to anyone. For $200, you can get a lot of information on how scripts work and all that.
That's cool. Yeah, I went to my wife is a big Jensen Ackles Supernatural fan, and so we went to this. I promise this ties in. We went to the Supernatural.
I'll talk about Jensen Ackles all day.
Listen, I understand. Okay, yeah. I get it. He's a handsome man.
He really is.
So, and he's super cool. So we went to the Supernatural Con thing. That's even now, 10 years after the final episode aired, it still is running strong and having thousands of people show up at convention centers just to hear the actors talk all day about their experience on Supernatural. And Mark Shepard, and I don't remember his character's name because I've never watched the show. I've only ever seen the Scooby-Doo episode.
Oh.
After the convention, I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. But Mark Shepard.
Okay. I don't know any of the actors' names. I only know some of the actors' names, but I know the characters from Supernatural. He was a big bad guy.
He came in the 5th season, I think. He wasn't
Crowley.
Crowley. I knew it was a C. I was thinking Crixus, but that's Spartacus. Crowley. So he was doing his thing, and he did the first 20 minutes of his panel in character. So he was very short, very blunt, kind of an asshole, pretty sarcastic, and I loved it. And a guy went up and he was like, hey, I'm in film school, and I was just wondering if you had any advice and before he could finish, Crowley was like, make your movie. Just make your movie. You're going to learn more doing it and figuring it out than you ever will talking about the thing. So follow your passion, see where it takes you, and make your movie. Next. And he just glossed over it, but I was sitting there just shook to my core. I was like, oh my God, just do the thing. Just do the thing. You can talk about it, because I went to school for broadcasting, and now I've been doing broadcasting in some form for another for 15 years and whatever. But I've learned way more doing the thing than I ever did sitting in a classroom. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you're I learned how to write comics writing comics. Like, yeah, of course you did. That makes total sense to me. And I don't feel like enough people recognize that they can learn it just by doing it. They think, at least, I mean, I'm the same way where I'm like, if I want to get into, I've always wanted to do like watercolor painting. That for me, like, I love how it looks. I love the color layering, all this stuff. But before I even wanted to start, I was like, okay, well, I got to get the right brushes and the right stuff and the right paper and and like, I got to get all of these things. And it was like, no, idiot, just do the thing and figure it out.
And a huge thing, I mean, we talked about it earlier with like the character designs and all that stuff, you know, is it's okay to be wrong. And you know, and it's perfectly okay to have a different idea, or, you know, like, I guess your ideas aren't golden.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like when you're trying things, like, it's fine to be like, you know, this sucks. This is a stupid idea, and put it to the side and work on something else. Or in a case of collaborating with someone and they have this idea, you know, yeah, it's not what I had in mind, but like, give it a go. Let's try it. Let's see what happens. Like, you know, and that's a huge part of it too, is just let your ideas go. At some point you have to let the art be free and fly away, and good or bad, you know.
And I've actually, just jolting my memory, is I ages ago when we did an interview kind of like this, which I think it might have been written down, but it might be in one of the books. I don't remember. But I just remember somebody asked me, you know, like, what do you enjoy about working with DC? And it's like, my favorite thing is probably that he has no precious golden children in any capacity. He's always willing to talk about, like, you know, a different idea, a better idea, just something, flip something on its head. Doesn't matter. It's like the conversation is always on the table for anything.
We're here to make something cool, not make something like specific. Like, it's just make a good comic. I mean, that's what we're here for. So yeah.
And the only caveat I would put on just make the thing, and I'm a huge proponent of just making the thing, but you got to make sure that you're in a mindset to learn from making the thing, because I definitely know that there are people out there who it's okay for the thing to suck. Like, first of all, it's like, it's probably gonna the first couple of times. But you know, you gotta learn your lessons from that, and you can't just keep churning out the same thing every time, right? You got to grow with each prospective iteration, and make sure that you're kind of in that mindset to grow and to make yourself better and to do the best job every single time. So
that's right. I love the caveat that you just gave of, like, you have to be ready to learn from the thing instead of just creating, oh, I have a different thing, let me just do the same process and make the same mistakes, and who cares, I'm making the thing, right? That's good. That's a good learning. One of the as I cheat real quick and look at my notes that I thought I was covering, and then I just called it out like an idiot. One of the things that I enjoy and I wanted to talk through, I didn't know if it was just the artist decision or if it was the collaboration thing. Specifically, like, the biggest example that I saw was as they're escaping from the dragon and they're going through the tunnel and the dragon breathes fire, and there's the same panel twice, but the second one shows all of the yellow tones of the fire getting very close to the car. That to me was such a cool moment of, like, this is visual. Yeah. Like, this is visual storytelling. This is what comics can do that you can't do in any other story medium. And so when Asterix has that moment of, like, oh God, you can feel that of just like, oh no. And so I was curious, like, how much of that is like, I need to like, I'm an overthinker. Is that a thing that you overthink to then create, or is it just like nope, this just has to happen and that's just how sequential art works? Like, it's not how does that work?
Don't remember.
Words out of my mouth, man. I was like, I have no idea.
If I had to guess, if I had to make an educated guess, and we do have all of the you know, the background material on this, so we could go check the script. But if I had to guess, I would say that the page was probably laid out in such a fashion in the script where DC said, you know, the dragon breathes fire and the fire gets closer to the car, and it looks like it's going to hit him or something like that. And so I figured out how the heck I was going to do that in a pleasing fashion in 4 panels. And then, yeah, you know, that's kind of one of the, if you're looking to kind of get a jump start on like how to do good sequential art, the Scott McCloud book, Making Comics, is I think still probably the standard for people who want to spend $20 on a book on how to make comics, and it's pretty good. I've read it; it's decent. I use a lot of the tools still, but that's one of the things that he talks about in terms of sequentials. It's like a way to show that something has changed is you do the exact same panel 2 times in a row, but in the second one, whatever you want the focus to be put on, something is different. So in that case, it's dark, and in the second one, it's pretty much the same image except the facial expression has changed and the color palette's completely different. And it's an impactful way to kind of just use 2 images to tell a slightly complex emotion and action sequence.
Yeah,
that'd be my guess. I don't know.
Issue in particular, like I definitely kind of micromanage the script, so there's a good chance that it is. I mean, like later on, I would learn through the Kubert School of Art writing classes to kind of just back off a little bit and give the artist some space. And and I do a lot of silent comics, or maybe around that time. So I'm also like I often think about things in panel to panel, but that's one key thing I learned from the classes is back off the micromanaging. I used to have it like 4 horizontal panels. This panel is like from like a worm's view eye, and so now it's just like here's a panel, here's what happens, and then go from there. But
and that I think a lot of that probably is the evolution of comics. Like if you go back and look at some of the early superhero books, and it's easy to pick like the Supermans, the Batmans, the Captain Americas that have been around for 70 plus years. Didn't Batman just hit 80 years? I think
that sounds about right. Who knows?
Absolutely. Batman just hit 80 years.
He's public domain in like what, 10 years?
Oh boy, here we come.
I think he enters the public domain.
But if you look at, because I have a real soft spot, I didn't always appreciate the older books because they're so wordy sometimes. And now looking at the same character having a very similar story, it's a completely different comic, because now I do think that there's more of an emphasis of let the artist tell the story. Like, yes, the writer, I feel like there's a balance between every relationship, and I don't feel like it's ever going to be the same with any 2 writer-artist duos of how they find that balance, whether or not it's like, hey, here's the plot, here's give me the thumbnails, cool, here's the dialogue, let's put it all together, or wherever. And I just think that it's fascinating if you look at how the styles of storytelling has changed and what works and what doesn't work. I feel like visually we're leaning more into letting the artwork tell the story instead of it was the midday on a bright summer hot day, and it's like, no, just show the sun and like maybe some wavy lines. That's the same exact thing. You don't I would love to see like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings rewritten today following those same ideas, and it would just be like as thick as the
short story,
that Cliff Notes. There were hobbits and then there weren't.
There's a graphic novel of The Hobbit from the 80s. It's actually it is a little wordy, but it's pretty good. It does a good job of kind of reimagining in a pre-Peter Jackson world. Imagining all those characters in that world. It's a very interesting read. I picked it up from my local library.
Hey, I love the library. I'm a big fan. So The Hobbit, this is the beauty of like treating these live. I love The Hobbit. That's probably my favorite book ever. And I own, it's falling apart and you can't see it. It's just out of frame, but it's, so they did an animated movie of The Hobbit in like 78, 79. And then they took the art from that, placed it in the midst of the book and released it as a book, like an illustrated book with the cartoon artwork all throughout it. And it is it's falling apart. I've had to like tape pages together because my dad used to be an English teacher. So he taught The Hobbit. That was his copy of it because he used the artwork to like keep kids interested, because if you're not into it, you're just not going to be into it. So he was like, instead, no, look, there's artwork, and isn't it great? And I think it's all watercolor too. And it just like, that's my standard. So I had a really hard time. I love the new movies, but I had a really hard time with how some of the characters looked, because they didn't match the 70s cartoon of it.
Yeah.
So how, because Hobbit movie, How the World Ends in Fire, would you ever consider or be open to like adapting that? Or do you just want to keep it as a comic because it works so well as a comic?
I mean, President Netflix shows up with that check. Let's rock.
So, like, really, like in this series in particular, like in my head when I'm going through the outline, I think I see it as an anime. Like everything I do is it's just in my head. Every issue is like, a 20-minute long, tight anime. So I mean, to me, I think it's perfect. I mean, I think someone should call us and give us a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I'm into that. I mean, I'm a comic artist, and that's my first and foremost goal, is to make a good comic. And all of my comics, I don't think about adaptation. You can't. Some people do, but I don't agree with that mindset. But if someone wanted to make an adaptation, I'm definitely down for it. I'd participate in that process. I know DC, we've spitballed about it before, just kind of as a joke. But in the actual making of the material, I think our top of mind is making a great book. And if it would also happen to be a great episode of animation, that's just a nice kicker.
Right.
But for me, the comic is I think I said it at the start, but I feel like it's the best way to create a story, is comics. So yeah, I'd be on board for an adaptation, but my heart is with the comics still.
I like that. It probably, I would imagine, if you're not focused on it being a good comic book, that how you create the comic would change if you were creating it just so that it could be adapted at some point, if you're just trying to IP farm yourself.
I ain't going to go off on a rant here, but if you want to look at any of the indie publishers that have flopped over the past 5 years, the reason is because that's exactly what they were trying to do, is just scarf up IP to make adaptations that never happened, and they didn't have any money, and they went out of business, and everybody got screwed. I almost went off on a rant there, but yeah, when you don't make comic books for the love of comics, of course you fail. That's just what happens. You got to be in this stuff for and love it for what it is.
Yep, comics for comics' sake. Let me check my notes, because I think that is it. It is. So as promised, in the sake of that's the end of my questions that I had, and I just like to prove I actually have notes and stuff, and I did research and things. Before we end, I got a couple of things to do. First thing is, I'm going to shut up and let the two of you talk. Share anything that you've got on your hearts, on your minds, on your brains. It could be about the book. It could be about an upcoming book. It could be about cucumbers. I don't care. This is the time that I am going to mute myself, and I'm going to let the two of you talk about whatever it is that you want people to hear.
Well, I'm scared of cucumbers. We'll say that. I have a diverticulitis, and I don't know if the seeds are a problem or not. So I haven't ate pickle in a year, and so that's my thoughts on cucumbers.
Got it. I love that. Yeah.
Hey, we could talk. You want to talk about invasive worlds?
Yeah, we can talk about invasive worlds. Sure.
We've never literally spoken about it. We've only DM'd.
Yeah. No, that's true.
It's a new series we have going on. We have the first 2 chapters, but they're really short chapters. Everything we're doing is it's very short. I think the first one's 4 pages, the second one's 6 pages. We're trying to keep everything 8 and under.
Yep.
And it started from, on my side of it at least, it started as an Elden Ring fan fiction.
Yep.
That we sort of started shifting in a different direction.
But not that different a direction. But kind of a different direction. But it's got the spirit.
Yeah.
When I pitch it to people, I tell them that it's like a Souls game. So we've been working on that for a little bit, for really just a little while now, and we're trying something new because that's what we like to do. It's a very pulp style story. It's the idea is to have something that's fast produced and sustainable, but still achieves a level of quality people are going to want to read. So it's a little bit rougher around the edges, a little bit grittier. It's in black and white. It's not in color, but it still kind of, I think, has the impact and the energy that we bring across in the color pages. And the first story is actually it has already been published right now in my new comic magazine, Leaded Pulp, which you can subscribe to today for only $4 a month. No commitment, cancel anytime. Available on my coffee page, leadedpulp.com. If you go to leadedpulp.com, you can sign up for a subscription. The first issue is available now. The second issue will be available sometime in mid-August, and it will have the second chapter of Invasive Worlds in it. But when we get a bunch of these stories finished, I think we're also going to do some sort of different thing with just the Invasive Worlds stuff. Again, this is very early days for this, so we haven't really talked about it a lot. But,
no, we haven't talked about the release schedule at all. But the loose plan is, Brendan has Leaded Pulp, and it's a perfect spot to land a little story like that. So the idea is, like, we're going to leave it with that, and then maybe a couple months down the road we might do like a global comic story, but keep it behind Leaded Pulp. And eventually, I'd really like to, since it is kind of rough around the edges, I would really like to do a Kickstarter, but like a remastered version.
Oh yeah,
I'd like to go back and let's actually put a little more work on the pages, and I think it'd be a really cool thing.
I would love to do it. I would love to do it in color at some point. Go through and really give it the color treatment. Would be a big deal. We've talked about a couple of different side projects over the past couple of months, and we can't tell you about all of them yet because not know we're real yet. But it's like World Ends in Fire is something that we really like making, but we also have realized that we've got a lot of other stuff we want to do as well, and we can't jam all of that into World Ends in Fire. So it's about being a little bit more experimental and trying a couple of different things. Where World Ends in Fire is like a modern fantasy comic where everybody's, wizards and warriors and whatnot, but they have cars and so on and so forth. Invasive Worlds is it's entirely in the other direction. It's savage fantasy. It's Elden Ring style, swords and magic and not a whole lot else. We're also interested in doing a sci-fi thing though, like a full far future kind of thing. So
yeah, he has an amazing set of characters already like sketched out, and we
can't see them yet, but they're there.
Cool. We fired the bullet on the other one, but it's awesome.
Yeah. So
something about creativity. I mean, that's really the heart of the World Ends in Fire, is just trying new things. We've done so many weird things with this project. Like we made a coloring book. Which is technically how it started, was a coloring book.
That's right, it is. I always forget that.
I do too. I always forget. But we have a coloring book. We have the hot sauce.
Yeah, I got the hot sauce.
That's awesome.
Hot sauce. What else have we done? I did a big banner that had the whole first issue, like in page by page.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we've done so many weird things with the World Ends in Fire of just trying stuff.
Yeah.
Comics is the place for weirdos to do weird shit. You got to embrace that. I mean, why not? Why be boring?
Yeah.
There's so many interesting things that we can do. Why be boring? So
that's cool. So with the World Ends in Fire, like I know the timeline is very malleable still for the trade, but like where should people go if they're like, enough hearing about it, I want to read the thing?
Well, Global Comics. We have the first 5 issues, I think, on there. Yep. Originally, the volume was going to be the 4 issues. I think we recently just decided we're going to try to just go into the full 5 in the volume 1.
Yeah. Thought process there being that it feels weird to have 5 issues done and only put 4 in the trade. So, it doesn't necessarily work as well from a cliffhanger standpoint, although chapter 5 still ends on a cliffhanger, so it still works.
I think so. But globalcomics.com, we're published the story's published with ZanCon Entertainment, but you should be able to search either one of those.
I think if you just cram The World Ends in Fire into Google, it comes up. I might I'm going to try it right now. Ends in Fire, Nope. That's Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Don't Google that.
Not the same.
If you Google The World Ends in Fire comic, it is the first result. So do that instead.
Great. I'll also just go ahead and link straight in this video description.
That also works.
So that all they have to do is expand the video description and then tap the Global Comics link, and you can get directly to all 5 issues of it.
And hey, maybe while you're there, you can also click the link to go check out Leaded Pulp and see some of our Invasive World stories as well. I'm going to make you commit to that now.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's at least you can read it at the moment.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And
there's a lot of other good stuff in there too. So
Yeah. Speaking of other stuff and where people find you and tappable links below, how do people find you on the internet to keep up with you?
You first, dude. I'm DC Horn. I'm on Twitter, but most all my stuff is really just ZanCon Entertainment. You can find me all over the place. Our webpage is zancononline.com. I think that's all I got where I am. Just want to come to my house. I mean, I could give you the address. See what happens.
Do that too, just for fun.
Perfect.
I'm Brendan Albetski. You can find my website, brendanalbetski.com. You should also check out my coffee page and tip me so that I can keep making art. I would really appreciate it. Or just, follow the page. I got some fun, I do polls there to decide what's my next fan art piece going to be. The active poll right now, I don't think it's going to be by the time this episode goes up. But right now it's Batman versus Godzilla.
I was wanting to tell you about this earlier. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
So I've been working on Detective Godzilla.
Oh no, we did. We talked about Detective Godzilla before.
It's almost finished. I got Matthias. He didn't have anything going on at the time, so we kind of worked a little thing out. And so it's almost finished. You need to do a Detective Godzilla back cover.
Probably, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Even if Godzilla doesn't win, which I think it will.
Yeah.
No, I will absolutely do a Detective Godzilla back cover, 100%. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, coffee, check it out. I'm Brendan Albetski on all the social media platforms. Follow my YouTube channel, just started up. I do long drawings of, me talking and listening to lo-fi music and drawing pictures. And I also do some cool time-lapse stuff. So, yeah, all those things, you can find them all on my website, brendanalbetski.com. Go to the link tree. Check it out.
Perfect.
Hire me to make your comics. I do that kind of crap too. I like working with this guy, but
awesome. All right. One last thing before we go that I started doing because I just think it's fun. I'm gonna take a screenshot to use for the YouTube thumbnail. So you guys can pose how you want to be seen. No, that's perfect. So good. So, all right, we're going to do the shot in 3, 2, 1. All right, cool. All right, that's everything. That's all the things. Click all of the links that are below. Stay tuned for more from both DC and Brendan. And guys, I always try not to say guys, but I'm literally talking to 2 guys right now. So it's not just a, hey
we'll
guys.
Accept it. Yeah, no, we're good.
So gentlemen, I appreciate you hanging out with me and spending time with me. Hang tight after I click end, and I got some logistical stuff for you, but that's going to be it for this interview on Longbox Punk. And what's a good podcast without a tagline? So that's going to do it for this one, punks. Now go do what's good for you and read some indie comics.